And then we go to monitoring, evaluation, and learning. We go to financing. When they are done, we can be able to bring them on because they are very, very far. I don't think we will be able to do anything with them today. Okay? Are you guys done? Or I preempted? Okay.
Okay. All right. So this is group 3. We were looking at child participation practice. I hope we're all together. So we're looking at child participation practice. So what are some of the emerging issues from the guidelines that we should follow up on? So there are quite a number. So the first one is use of technology in child participation, and that's coming from the fact that that children are very active online. So we are looking at social media, mainstream media, for example, TV and radio, as well as tele and video conferencing. And then linked to that, just below was how do we also tackle online child sexual exploitation, such that children and other stakeholders also engage safely with children online. So that was the first point, use of technology. The second was sensitization of children during electoral seasons and periods, such that children are not used as agents of youth, and we can counter that notion. Also, an interesting point that came up is that as we strengthen practice, child participation practice, how do we also address the psychological needs of children? So there's been an interesting argument that has come out that child participation and children's protection should go hand in hand, such that as children participate, they're also not put at harm or at risk. Then the next point was creation of platforms to share information and insights for children to understand more about themselves. So for example, what services are available for children and who is providing those services. So that information needs to be made available for children to know, such that then they can participate more effectively. We have talked about child sexual exploitation. Then in this, over the last 2 years, we've experienced the COVID-19 pandemic. So what has been the impact of that on the wellness of children, as well as their basic needs? So we saw that, for example, due to school closures, education was really impacted on children. Also ensuring that there's strong linkages of initiatives from the national level all the way to the continental level. So activities and initiatives should not be disjointed, but should be aligned. Also, impact of conflict and migration on children, on the effective participation of children. So for example, intercommunal conflict here in Kenya has been quite a big issue. So how is that addressed to ensure that children participate effectively? Also the revival or establishment of national level child participation structures in certain countries. So that's something that the committee can assess during state party reporting, such that they put state parties to task on how children are actually participating at the national level. Then we also looked at the economic crisis in several African countries, especially now due to the pandemic. That has also impacted children's participation as well. Also sensitization on the participation of special groups of children. So we're looking at those who are living with disabilities. So due to cultural norms and practices, such children are not considered. So if other children are not considered, what about these who are very vulnerable? And that leads to their segregation. So that's something that also needs to be looked into, as well as how to ensure that public services are made child-friendly and child-sensitive, so that you don't have, for example, if children are hospitalized or they are put in, they're in conflict with the law, they are put together with adults, but how can we ensure that those are separated? So those are some of the topics or issues that we came up with that are emerging. So looking at the second question, which was what should be done in Kenya by the following actors to ensure that the guidelines are implemented. So we started with the national government, which is to ensure access to information and services which are child-friendly and child-sensitive. Also to develop laws that cater to the best interests of children. So for example, if a parent is imprisoned, what then happens to this child? Automatically they may go to a relative, but is that what they really want? And is that safe for them as well? Also to develop tools for government agencies and authorities on how to engage effectively with children and to also facilitate their meaningful engagement. Then the other point was to develop policy guidelines on engaging children in programming. So from the design stage all the way to monitoring and evaluation, as well as establishment of child-sensitive budgeting and financing activities, especially for children. It's not working. Oh, okay. Yeah. So apparently in Kenya, child budgeting for, it's off. Okay, it's on. I think it's fine. Okay, so budgeting for children has been a problem in Kenya, and that hasn't happened for quite some time. So that needs to start at the national level. So going to the county government, we also put the same point on budgeting. At the county level, there needs to be budgeting for children's activities. Also revamping child-friendly institutions. So those are children and youth centers, libraries, mental health centers as well, for children to have information and to have access to information. The next, okay, so that was it. So for CSOs, one is to create platforms for children's engagement, sensitization on child participation for other stakeholders, for them to understand what child participation is all about, as well as to create awareness among children on CSOs, what their work is and their purpose, so that they're also aware and they can engage in the work of CSOs. For religious and faith-based organizations, one was to popularize the guidelines in places of worship, also to ensure that there's capacity building on child safeguarding and child protection, as well as also integrating church-based programs into child participation initiatives. So we had an example of the Catholic Church. They already have something for children, so if that could also be integrated and even shared as best practice among religious organizations. On academia, we had children's involvement in ongoing curriculum development. So introduction of new curricula or revising it, children should be involved, so there needs to be creation of spaces, as well as integration of child participation capacity building in training for teachers. So they need to be aware of what child participation is, as well as also involving children in educational transitions and allowing them to express themselves. So for example, from primary to secondary, how do children manage that transition? And what do they express about it? How do they feel about it? And that should be taken into account. Yeah, we didn't have anything for media. Or we didn't get there. We ran out of time. But that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm waiting for this group for capacity building to send me theirs on email, but she sent on WhatsApp. But as I'm trying to download it, do you have any input? And then probably someone can be in that group can be able to add on anything, especially media that has been left out. How practices can we enhance practices of child participation in the country?
Any comments or feedback?
Can I just speak? Yes. Thank you. So
because of people online.
Sorry, I don't use this so much. So we're also proposing on the part of the media that we do more sensitization for journalists and media practitioners on how to report cases of child abuse, and especially since we are heading to general elections, so they need to be more cautious what and how to report about children violations.
Thanks, Felix. No.
Sorry. Yeah, media is a very powerful tool. I hope you can hear me. I don't have to use this other one. Yeah. This is for the people here, and this is for the people on the other side. So, nani aniski? Okay. So, media happens to be a very powerful tool, especially when it comes to communication and passing information. And I believe when they want to advocate, if they want to paint you as a good person, media has the power to paint you as a good person. if they want to paint you as a negative or a bad person, they have the power and capacity to do that. They just need to publish a story about you that is negative, and you will trend in all negative ways. So if media were to use that power and capacity to synergize and communicate different stories about children, specifically bringing out some of the challenges and issues that children are communicating out there with regards to different issues that they go through, then media have a very, very powerful way in which they can actually advocate for changes, both at the national level, at the county level, even for other non-state actors who need to do something about child participation, by simply telling us the benefits of just doing child participation, just that. And you can be able to see it, and you can be able to embrace it. So media is a very, very powerful tool. Thank you.
Thank you. Additions? Additions? Okay, thank you. So the next, thank you so much, Marilyn. The next group is capacity building. So I'm going to give each group 5 minutes because we need to be out of here by 1 o'clock. So I'm hoping the hotel can give us up to 1:30. So, and because we have a webinar in the afternoon, so we are trying to manage time. So Mombi?
So as we were speaking about capacity building for child participation stakeholders. And first of all, we added another column because we had what the actors can do, but also in the capacity development, how can that capacity be built? So in the first one, the first actor, there is the national government, where, of course, there needs financing in the application of the AU guidelines. And then, but first, the first question, what are some of the emerging issues from the AU guidelines on child participation that we should follow up with the committee? And the first thing that was even asked by one of our members was whether there is a tool on child participation. So I think there is no tool. So there ought to be a tool that should be developed, and not just developing, but also reach out to all the actors in child participation. So that is the one thing that we need the tool, because we are saying that we need to have the children participate, but how are they going to do that? And even in M&E, how will they know that that is happening? So that is what we had there. Then the second question was what should be done in Kenya by the following actors to ensure that the AU guidelines on child participation are implemented. So we went down, we added more actors. We see the national government, first of all, what they should do is finance the application of the AU guidelines. Again, this is a country that has 1 million guidelines, 1 million policies, but the gap is in implementation. And mostly implementation is pegged in financing. The next thing is child participation in child-related policies. All these policies, again, we're talking about, do we have the input of the children during the policy formulation process? Then we went down to county government. Here, again, county governments coming up with their own child protection policies. Did we have the children in the table? So they should involve children. They should also establish platforms, whether in children's spaces, not just in the schools. There should also be platforms, if it can come from county governments, that has already built the capacity of that child space to promote child participation. So they should establish platforms in child spaces where the children can participate. And again, budget allocation for child participation in the county. How can their capacity be built? Oh my God, you notice that national government, we have no idea how the government can build their capacity. But well, we really welcome your input. In county government, how can their capacity be built? Awareness of the need, first of all, the need to have children participate. I think it was the guy from NCACS who went and asked them, did the children participate? Maybe they did not know that the children need to be participating. Also establish platforms. Their capacity should be helped in that. If there is another organization in the county that can work with the county government to come up with these platforms, that would be good. Budget allocation, that capacity, I guess, would come from the national table. The other actor I don't know why. Okay. The other actor is CSOs, the civil society organizations. There needs a lot of advocacy efforts on child participation in every level. There needs to be a lot of noise in every platform that children need to be involved in this. So the CSOs have been tasked, or it would be good if they added onto that their advocacy efforts in adding child participation. Again, CSOs would maybe be in M&E, in monitoring how is child participation happening. I think that is something that they can also do. How can their capacities be built? Collaborations and partnerships, I think that speaks for it. Yeah, we are better when we are a bigger voice. If there is a bigger organization that can be able to pull together some CBOs to do this child participation, let that be done. Partnerships also. Religious organizations, and here we are talking about religious organizations, FBOs, and even in the institutions. Platforms in religious institutions that allow for child participation. And we went down to a church, down to a Sunday school. Is there a church that you may know that even in coming up with this Sunday school room, even maybe involved the views of those children? Or are those children in this room, maybe it's fresh paint, they're not even hearing the sermon, you know. So in the churches, do they even involve children's views in whatever decisions they make? Maybe that is something that the churches or religious organizations can be tasked in doing. Again, here, that capacity can be built by awareness. Churches need to know that we don't just make decisions for these children. These children ought to have a space and a voice in the children matters in the churches or in whatever religious institution. And I don't know if there's another. There are many more actors down. We even have teachers, parents, academia. And this one kind of looked at academia is like the institutions of higher learning. Maybe here, how can they promote child participation? Maybe they are the ones who can do some sort of research. How is child participation happening? Is it happening? Who are doing something good that needs to be done? If they can put in child participation as some of their research projects, that would be good, so that it brings about more awareness to people. Hey, look, partner with, okay. Yeah. Schools offer an environment that promotes child participation. Now here is maybe when you talk about schools, it's all the other learning institutions, whether it is even the kindergarten or primary, high schools, have that environment, that open up that environment, that the children in the schools know that their voice matters, and their voice can be heard in their own issues. And an environment, would have to come from governance, because from the school itself, they are the ones who would allow. Because maybe a teacher would have the heart to have children participate or give their views, but the teacher may not have the position of saying that today we are talking about something or we are doing something. That would come from the school governance. How can they do their capacity building on staff, on the need for child participation? That is how their capacity can be built, if they're able to even have their teachers or the people in the institutions know the need for child participation. So in the media, the first sentence, I think we didn't have something to say on how they are doing, so we put it in a reporting format and said that the media is biased on reporting. It does not prioritize children issues. If that can stop, if the media, this year, we're not talking about anything else, yet there's a lot happening. Then also reach out to the children. Don't just wait for them to go to the studio. They may not even be able to go to that studio. Reach out to the children and allow them to express their views. And that's one thing that they can do. How can that happen? Maybe we saw like the Ministry of Education, there can be some collaboration with the ICT department on maybe developing some programs on that. Community volunteers, we went now down to community volunteers, the CHVs and all the people down in the community. They can do the area mapping and reporting. Maybe we don't know where these children are, so they don't even know that they can participate, or even if you want to have them participate, we may not even know where they are. So we went down to door. Community volunteers ought to do that area mapping. Say that here we have some children, we may have them, we may not even know whether they're children living with disability, even when you as an organization would want them to participate. That is information that can come from the community volunteers. And you will find that on ground, we don't have a lot of data on children. Children are not reported on ground. It's like we only report them maybe when they're born or when they do something bad. After that, in between, there isn't a lot of data on children on the ground. How can that capacity be built? Training in the mapping the children. As you're doing whatever activities you're doing at the door-to-door, it's good to know how you can collect this data. Also transport facilitation, because they are not paid, but if there can be an organization or something that can build their capacities to be able to go and knock on each of these doors, that would be good. Community health workers, again, these are the ones who are with the children one-on-one. If they can collect their views, that would be good. But again, they would need to know that these children have a right to have a say in what is going on. And it is in the small things. When we're going down, we're even saying that even in the administration of a vaccine, polio vaccination, if that community worker knows that that child could have a say on how that vaccination has been administered, maybe that is something that can be picked up. Because I remember there's a place where I was living, there was a CHV, and she was in a hurry to go back because she had gotten a lift to go back to the office. So she collected children, and she just told children to come. She did not even ask them where they were from, because that is how she would have known the door-to-door, and she did not mark the doors. So other children ended up, children we are going. So they went, and many of them got double shots, just because they had. But she was in a rush to go back to the office because there's a lift. That's why she collected children. So if there was a creation on your awareness on child participation, on what you're doing, if you're even collecting the views of the children, you'd be able to do your work in a more organized way. Parents and caregivers, parents down, because the child is right down at the first unit of where the child is. It's at the home. They should know that the parents or the caregivers should allow children to be free to engage in the home affairs, and also they express their views in the family matters, because that is where now child participation begins. We have seen that many of these children, unfortunately, some are even committing suicide because maybe there's no environment where I can speak about anything. We see children just, it's the holidays and I want to discard these children. I can send them off to my brother's home, but I don't know how my brother is treating those children. But if I know that I don't have an environment to speak about even this thing that we are moving somewhere, that is even where someone spoke about child participation and child abuse, there's a correlation there. How can the parents and caregivers have their capacity built, again, in creation and awareness on the need for child participation? The teachers here is promote child participation in schools. If the school has given this environment, you as a teacher come up with ways, whether it's clubs or other platforms, on how these children can give their views and express their views in the school running. Again, here, how can that be built? The capacity is just if the teachers themselves can have the awareness that this needs to be done, can have the resources on how we can promote child participation. That can be good. Thank you. We welcome input.
Thank you so much to the group. For the sake of religious people who might not be here, or rather who might be here but they're not speaking, just to clarify the point on platforms in religious organizations that allow for child participation. That was our proposal, that we need more platforms. We appreciate that religious bodies or other institutions are offering those platforms through children participating in Sunday schools, or those madrasas. They give poems, they're reciting poems and all those other activities. But our concern, which we are proposing, is that we need to allow children to have children participation in decision making, much as they are participating, but there's a gap when it comes to decision making. Then that means we create more awareness on how children can be participating in making decisions of their own, guided by the adults. Thank you.
Thank you. The next one is the monitoring and evaluation group. You go from you guys are ready? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Let's start with the framework. And then we can go to Disemination.
Yes, good afternoon. Yes, my name is Kevin Kipchirchir. As already introduced, I'm an advocate trainee at the Kenya School of Law, and we are happy this afternoon to present on the legal framework. We did not follow the format provided by Jennifer on what institutions can do, but then we can take on that project after this presentation, because our presentation is more or less contoured on what each convention provides and which statute or what the Constitution provides on children. Okay. So I was saying we did not use the structure given because our presentation is really contoured on what each convention provides, what the Constitution provides, what statutes of Parliament, and what policies provide. So, and then we took a more general before cascading down to specific policies. So we started with the mother of them all, the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, followed by the African Charter, then the Constitution, then the Children's Act and other acts of Parliament. So we have the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, and Article 3 provides for the best interest. And I think this is the general provision on what matters as regards the child, that in every matter concerning the child of paramount importance is the best interest of the child. Then to Article 12 on the right of the child to be heard, or the right to expression, and particularly provides that the state party shall assure to the child who is capable of forming his or her own views the right to express those views freely in all matters affecting the child, the views of the child being given due weight in accordance with the age and maturity of the child. Now, that Article 12 rather is in separate parts, which have been interpreted by General Comment number 12 of the Committee on the Rights of the Child, especially the obligation, the state party obligation to assure, and also who is a child who is capable of forming his or her own opinion. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, not all children are on the same scale. Some children are able to form an opinion at a certain age, while others are not. Let's take a practical example. A child in Wajir, say, of 15 years old, may not hold the same opinion, or may not be capable to form the same opinion as a 9-year-old child in Karen, for instance, and that's really practical, used very loosely. Now, the general comments also defines what the right to express, in what aspects aspects concerning the child are you able to express, and the due way to be given. Should it be you must follow what the child says, or should you give it consideration while making a decision affecting them? And also the age and maturity of the child. Remember, the evolving capacity of the child should also be taken into consideration. Sub-Article 2 on the same provides for expression in judicial and administrative proceedings. This strikes a chord with children in conflict with the law. They should be heard, given an opportunity to be heard, either themselves or through a representative of their choice, and that's where Wakili or Watoto comes in. The next, please. Yes, so again, Article 12 through to 15 provides for a CAT's provision on the right of the child to participate and its attendant provisions. We've had Article 12 on the right to be heard, Article 13 provides on the freedom of expression and any limitation to be provided for in law. So there cannot be a discretionary limitation on the right of the child to be heard. There must be the tripartite limitation on the right of the child to be heard and to make an expression. That is, the limitation must be provided for by law. It must be necessary in a democratic society and must be proportionate to the aim being sought to be achieved by the limitation of the right to expression. 14 is on the freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. The child should be able to hold their own thoughts, conscience, and follow their own religion. So that removes from the concept of, say you are in a school which is Muslim dominated and you want to express your Protestant views. You must be allowed to do so as a child. 15 as well is on the freedom of association and to freedom of assembly. I think one of the previous presenters presented on where schools have used children to protest actions. I think we all remember the Langata Primary School saga in 2018 or thereabouts. This is protected as well. The children must be able to join assemblies if they wish and to demonstrate and express themselves in those assemblies. Then subsequently, we've gone now to the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child. Now we are cascading closer home to the African continent. Article 42 and Article 7 of the Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child provides for the freedom of expression, and the interpretation is pretty much the same as well as in the Convention on the Rights of the Child. And Article 9 of the freedom of thought. So Article 7 through to 12 of the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child provides for what will be a package on the rights of the child to participate in society. That is, to hold a view, to express that view, and not to be punished for the view that they hold and they express. Article 3 on non-discrimination, and these are principles really on children under the CRC and also shared with the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, that there shall be no non-discrimination. So for instance, you cannot say certain children cannot hold an opinion on this, while certain children can hold an opinion on this, etc., etc. Article 8 on freedom of association, I think that's quite self-explanatory. Now more contoured is Article 14.2i, which provides that health professionals, while dealing with matters of the health, must give meaningful participation to all those who are engaged. So for instance, if you have a child under the operation table in the theater, you must be able to give consideration. And remember, under the right to health, there must be consent sought from the parties, and the consent must be informed. So you must be able to, as far as possible, inform the child what the operation is or what the healthcare procedure is, and therefore seek their consent, therefore their meaningful participation in such a procedure. Article 31 on the participation of the child in African values. Now we were divided on opinion on what African values are, because as we quite know, in the African society it could mean what the mommy and daddy says is what sells that day. So there must be a reading, a purposive reading to Article 31 that the participation of the child must be paramount, even while upholding the African values that we so seek to uphold. I think that was all for the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child. Now we are home with the Constitution. Now, one of the blanket provisions on Article 10 on the principles of national service and governance, I do think, provides for public participation, and public has been defined in not really defined to include children, but then the bill, the Public Participation Bill, which is now in Parliament, defines that public does not give a discrimination on age. So also children make part of our esteemed public. Article 33 on freedom of expression. Remember, the Bill of Rights is applicable to everyone, so there is no age limit to the application of the Bill of Rights. And Article 53.2, which I think is familiar with us all, on the best interest of the child to be given consideration in any undertaking. Now, this may sound boring because everywhere it's almost the same thing. They come from the same thing, that's the best interest of the child. Article 118 on Parliament to facilitate public participation. Now, we were given a really practical example on why this is yet to be implemented, given that Parliament does not have yet standing orders on participation of children in parliamentary procedures. That is, children can't give their views before Parliament. They have to come in through, say, the sponsoring organization for instance, total news. So therefore, there is hope with the public participation bill, which includes that public is not limited to anyone by age. But then that was one of the recommendations we made as the group, that there should be standing orders in Parliament, so that if there is a matter involving children, it's only fair that the children so concerned be heard on the subject matter. Then now we have the Acts of Parliament, Kenya Basic Education Act, which are under Section 4Q, is instructed the schools to include children in decision making and ensure participation of children in all matters concerning them in the school. Closely following, and I think I should have started with this one, is the Children Act. Under Section 8.3 provides that taking of the children's views in child placements. Now these are really contoured area of children practice, where there is a problem, say, in a family, and you need to place a child in institution or in the statutory institutions. You must give paramount importance to the children's views. And now, again, in all matters concerning to the child, we must always go back to Article 53, which reads about best interest of the child. Part 3 on parental responsibility provides that you should take into account the children's views as a parent. So as you exercise your parental responsibility, yes, you are the parent and will be taken into account for anything you do, but at the end of the day, you must be able to take into account what your child does or thinks. Yes. Then now we have policies. I think paramount here is the Child Participation Guidelines Policy of 2018, which establishes the Kenya Children Assembly. And it is thanks to the Kenya Children Assembly that children in Kenya have been able to participate in a number of policies and formulations in the country. There are elections for these outfits, and children between the age, below the age of 16, I do think, are allowed to vie in this one. And also the policy provides for guidelines on participation of children. And one of the standards, it must be transparent, voluntary, respectful, relevant, child-friendly, and supported by training. By transparent, it must be able to tell the child what indeed they are participating in. Voluntary, you must not force children to take part in participation. So remember, the right to express yourself also includes the right not to express yourself. That also cascades to the children. And it must be child-friendly and supported by training. So there must be capacity building as well to enable children to participate effectively in society. Then we have the Children Court Practice Directions by the Judiciary. Part 3, particularly on children matters, provide for how to conduct children affairs so that, we can build an environment in courts where children are able to take part or to express themselves freely. They might not love to express themselves in a public gallery, but then for an in-camera session, they will express themselves more. And I think this strikes a chord with the children practitioners in the room. Then children with disability are also provided for and covered, and then Part 4, particularly on the children court environment. So we do not want a stuck, boring court if you are considering children matters. And I think one of the courts, Malindi Law Courts, has a cartoon-ish courtroom for children matters, and that really goes a long way in ensuring children participation in the courts. Then we have the Reproductive Health Care Bill, Section 28(1)(b). This is yet to pass in Parliament, but provides that in considering pregnancies where it involves a minor, you must be able to consult the child and the guardian on the position on the same. Then we move to made recommendations. Funding as well. So our first recommendation, and I think cuts across everyone, funding opportunities are really limited because it is tied to voting. Children are not of voting age in our country, so therefore the financiers, that's the members of Parliament, are not interested in baiting this group of society. So funding has been limited, and therefore children causes have always relied on donor funding, which does not really portray the will of the national lawmakers in this framework. Then creating an avenue for parliamentary participation. I think I've spoken on this, the lack of standing orders on children participation, which should be input. Ensuring widespread participation. That is so that to devolve participation out of the urban centers, out of the easily to reach areas, also outside. Participation of children has been limited mostly to schools, But then we remember there are children, so there are children in informal settlements, there are children in rural areas which are not really accessible to such social amenities as schools where we can easily reach them. The fourth one is legal curriculum on the basic rights of participation. The right to participate is normally introduced really late in our curriculum. I think in our high school when I first learned that I can participate in society, yet I needed to express a view while I was in class 6 or something. Then lastly, to include children in voting. These are long shot, but certainly if we consider that they are the age of 16, by the age of 16 someone is able to vote, that would perhaps also give impetus to the lawmakers to direct funding here. Thank you. I'll be welcoming comments and questions.
Any comments? Additions? The legal framework. You see why it took forever? So the next group is monitoring and evaluation. Monitoring and evaluation. Anybody see?
Okay, thank you. You can't hear me. Hello. Oh, yes. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lorena Atieno, and I'm part of Group 4, and we were discussing on emerging issues relating to the AU guidelines and how the issues that might be faced in its implementation, monitoring, and any other form of ensuring that the guidelines actually work within our society. So you'll find that most of our points will incorporate almost everything the other groups have said. So yeah, we'll start with the emerging issues that arise from the AU guidelines as have been discussed. So the first one was protection of the children in contact and conflict with the law, which is obviously the main point and the main reason why we have this child participation. We have the provision of services and needs for the children in contact and conflict of the law. So the services not only includes the physical services, but also the contact with the lawyers or the contact with other people relevant in child participation or in law, implementation of the guidelines in practice, because we are going to have these laws and guidelines and recommendations, but how will we ensure that these laws and guidelines are implemented within our society? Children awareness, children as part of the public, so public awareness of the rights and of the rights of the children and its observance, ensuring peer education, the contextualization of information dissemination, that is ensuring that the information reaches not only the public, but also the children who are being affected by these laws. We have monitoring by the government, for example, of street children and what happens next. And we have data sharing mechanisms amongst different organizations and different sectors, such as the university, the society, including the public, different organizations, and most importantly, the dissemination of modern and recent information. Yeah. So we followed the whole plan where what each actor should do in relation to, kindly scroll down, in relation to ensuring the implementation of EU guidelines. So we started with the national government. So obviously their main function includes financing, ensuring that they finance this implementation that happens not only in the national government, but also in the county government, because they're the ones in charge of the budget. Financing of the monitoring activities, because to ensure implementation, we also have to ensure that these bodies, as we'll discuss, are being monitored. So the government has to finance these monitoring activities that will take place. Through the Ministry of Education, the government has to ensure that a framework has been set up for all schools to participate. For example, we've already discussed about the Kenya Children Assembly, but you'll realize such an assembly does not have access to every single school within Kenya. So with the government setting a framework where every school has to participate in such activities, for example, we are able to ensure that every school or every student can participate. Yeah, so monitoring and evaluation systems for the school and related organizations. So this is what the government should finance, but ensuring that these monitoring and evaluation systems, including the government itself, carry out their functions as they should. Yeah, setting up a framework coordinating the line ministries. We discussed that not only does the Ministry of Education participate in ensuring child participation, to some extent we have the Ministry of Interior and Coordination, we have the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Labor. So we ensure that all these line ministries are able to interact and be able to cooperate to ensure that child participation is effected. Yeah, so that is it on national government. We proceed to the county government, which has a closer reach to the children. Yeah, so we'll start with directing focus to specific schools to ensure implementation. So they're the ones with a closer reach to the people. Yeah, so they have to ensure that these students within the school or the schools within the counties actually implement these student participation activities. For example, the assemblies that we're talking about. For example, their involvement in government decisions in what will end up affecting them. Yeah. So regulation of curriculum to avoid instances of violent extremisms, because we also have an issue of child participation, yes, but also wary of which information are they participating in or which information are they sharing amongst each other. So we should have a curriculum that prevents violent extremism, to ensure that the information which they're exercising in or they're participating in actually benefits them and does not push them to any sort of violence. Yeah, involving children in child participation forums within the county. So we had an example, for example, we had an example of a road that is supposed to pass nearby their school. We have to realize that the students might be affected in some way. There might be noise that will be coming, that will be affecting them when the cars are passing by. We had an example of, that will come later. Yeah, so such an example. The children, especially if they are being affected by the decisions of the county government, they should be involved in decision making in such instances. We have educating the children on the importance of their voices, through schools, through workshops. Yeah, we'll discuss that as we proceed. Complaint mechanisms for the children. An example we had is hotline numbers. So the children should have a room or a space or a safe space where they can be able to complain if they feel like their voice is not being heard, for example, or they are not being given room to participate in decision making. So the example we have is hotline numbers where they can be able to call directly to specific persons within the county government who can be able to ensure that their voices are actually heard in decision making. Yeah. So the other one is student assemblies within the county where they interact with the government. So they are able to not only just interact amongst themselves as students, but they also interact with the government and discuss, this is what is supposed to happen, or this is what we need as the students. And yeah, such interactions will be able to enhance the public participation of children. So next we proceed to civil society organizations, the CSOs. So our first point was appointing experts at grassroots level. Yeah. So the experts are able to interact with the children or even the public at grassroots level and ensure that we not only have these discussions within boardrooms as such, we also have discussions and interactions between the public and the children from where they are. Yeah. So that they are also affected, or they're also able to discuss their problems, which can come back and then we discuss it here, and then we can be able to help them. And yeah, there's a whole line of that. Yeah, capacity building within the CSOs, so that is within each civil organization, working with each other and being able to ensure that we have a common goal depending with a different organization and what its goal is. Yeah, interaction amongst the CSOs to ensure exchange of ideas. So, for example, such a forum, because you'll see that each organization, for example, does its own research does its own research and develops its own information, but being able to interact with each other frequently enables the CSOs to exchange information and also to come up with new ideas that will affect the children and ensure the public participation or the children participation as we should. Yeah, and then stakeholder meetings to avoid duplication of roles, to synergize resources. So an example we had is, for example, you ensure, okay, one organization A, does its efforts to ensure child participation to a certain group of people. And then a different organization comes and does the same thing to the same group of people. You see, there's wastage of resources because you've done the same thing twice. Yet we could have used the same resources to do the same efforts in a different place, or to do something different in relation to what the goal of the organization is. So with having these meetings, you're able to ensure that, yes, we are working towards the same goal, but we have somehow different roles, but to ensure that our efforts are not repetitive, but they are actually diverse and bringing results to the society. Yeah, so that's it on the CSOs. We proceed to the religious organizations or the faith-based organizations. So our pictures the fact that so many people go to religious organizations. For example, 80% of the Kenya's population is affiliated with the church, and about 11% is affiliated with Islam. So there's so much reach within the religious organizations. So the first one is involving children in matters relating to infrastructure within the church. So we had an example where they were creating a parking spot within a church, and they ended up affecting the playing ground for the children, and the children weren't really happy within the church. So you see such an instance, for example, involving the children in such decision making, it even encourages the children to be able to participate in decision making outside such a forum. Yeah. The next one is the education of the people, implementing this within their plans, and most churches have a yearly plan of the activities, and the fact that they have much reach to not only the children but also the adults, they are able to ensure that they can attract more people to learn about children participation. Yeah, complaining on behalf of the people and decision making, because as a church or as a religious organization, as the Islamic community, as the church community, or even as the atheist community, they have a bigger voice when they are together. So when they are able to complain of injustices within the society, for example, the children within a certain society are not being heard, and the church raises this voice, the church is able to be heard more than the children, because that is the reality of the society. So the religious organization has the duty of airing such grievances in such a situation. it's basically helping the society to achieve its goal. Yeah. So academia, we talked of 2 points because our focus was mainly on higher institutions. So implementing it into curriculum, our main issue with the curriculum is the fact that so much information is still old, so developing new information, bringing new information into our school curriculum as it is right now, not what was there in 2001 or something. And yeah, encouraging research into the relevant topic. Yeah, and finally, in the media, we have ensuring youthful and monitored content to ensure access to all people, catering to age and interests of the audience. So the media understands the audience, or one of the functions of the media is understanding the audience. So if they're able to work in a way, they are able to disseminate such information about children participation to the people, in a way they'll be able to be attracted to it and to understand it. It will be really beneficial towards achieving our goal. The next one is bringing up transgressions of the government, etc., including schools, societies, churches, all towards children. So making children matter to be news. Once again, the media has a way of phrasing information that can be able to reach more people. So the media also has a part in ensuring that this information about transgressions happening within the society reaches the people to ensure that more action is taken. And finally, media acting as a system of checks for the government. I think that one is explained by the second point, by the fact that they are sharing more about what is happening within the society in relation to children participation. They are able to help ensure more reach of this information, because the more the people know, even the more the government is encouraged. That's not the right word. Is encouraged to do what they are supposed to do. So that is the presentation from Group 4. Thank you. Yes. Any questions?
Thank you. For me, it was a comment. So for that group, I want you guys to think about what numbers do we need at each stage. What do we need to monitor to check if participation is happening? Okay? For that group, like for example, at the national level, what do we need to check? Is it the amount of money that has been designated to child participation? At the community level, number of children who have been, what numbers do we need for that group? It's more in monitoring, it's accountability. Yes, we dwell on accountability, but on the monitoring and evaluation, this is somewhere that I think we are missing. So over lunch, I think we can sit together and we can discuss that. So to our final group, this was a group of one person because everybody ran away from math. George. So it was a group of one person. So George, everybody else ran away. But all of you have touched on his group.
So I think maybe the fact that I'm alone, how many of you have been involved in the budgeting process for children in Kenya? Can only see one. So we are normally very few. So I'm not surprised that I was all alone. No, but let me just say from the outset that I think the input that you've given is very, very useful. And just one rider to Jenny, when you're for Group 1, look at the stuff that they put there for the Africa Union. Yes. All that is already in. Yes. If you look at the systems already at the Africa Union, that's already in. So tease it out and pull out what is really important. One thing I can add, which is more global, is that the Africa peer review mechanism, they should have the child participation within the framework of the 3 Ps, looking at the child friendliness index. Do you understand what I'm talking about? All right. Now, the 3 Ps, protection, participation, and what? Provision. All right? So basically, when the African governments actually review themselves in terms of performance on children's issues, we are suggesting as a continent and as a country that they make sure that they actually review the performance of the country on the basis of the child friendliness index. Now, during the Kibaki administration, Kenya used to be among the top 10, but we've since slipped. Now, if you look at the Africa Child Wellbeing Report from 2008, the first launch in Nairobi, up to 2016, you'll see all that data is there. And the country that has come from war, like Rwanda, is actually either number 1 or number 2. And the countries that are richest on the continent are the ones that are doing the poorest. So it's not a question of how rich the country is, but it is the political will. All right? So therefore, when you're going to the elections now, make sure that you choose the right people who can actually push for the political will for the good of the children on the continent. So, in terms of the government, I'll make this very short because everything that you've talked about here has a monetary component to it. So we can't go into the details. But let me just highlight the broader areas. The national government has a responsibility for the budget and the coordination of all children's issues. The children's function has not been devolved to the countries. You're still using the system that was there of the provincial administration that was there before during the 8 provinces. Now we have the 47 countries, so you have the children's officers at the county level, correct? All right, fine. That being given, then the question is, how much money is given to the National Council for Children's Services? How much money is given to the Department of Children's Services? Again, I can speak authoritatively on this. I was among the first board members, one of the directors of the first National Council for Children's Services that produced the first Children's Act, 2002. So now you understand where I'm coming from. So the budget for the National Council for Children's Services 2021 to 2022 was only 80 million, correct? All right? But now you remember the argument that we had last year. What was the budget that was given to the Department of Children's Services? So the question I throw to you is, who is the AIE holder, especially when it comes to participation, children's participation? Who is it? DCS. Do they have sufficient money? So the question, one of the recommendations that should come from here to the government and to the DCS is that they need to enhance the budget for children's participation in the country. Because the budget, the money that is given to them is not consistent with what we've heard from the presentation that was done in terms of what the Committee of Experts expects on what children's participation means. Children's participation is not just the DAC, the Day of the African Child. It's not. It's much more. You saw the list, isn't it? And some of the things that you're now recommending under what's happening at the national level, what's happening at the county level, what's happening at the community level, all that is there.
George, sorry, AIE before we go.
Authority to incur expenditure.
Thank you.
All right? Okay, let's go down. Again, now, we've talked about the revision of the guidelines for the protection of children. It started in 2006 to 2010. Between 2010 and 2011, you produced 22,000 copies which were sent out to the counties, correct? Then it was meant to have been translated and to be made child-friendly. That has never been done, correct? So, earmark funds for it. Again, these are the things that should go into the planning now. So what I'm saying here, ladies and gentlemen, my colleagues, is that take this into account when you're doing the lobbying, when you're looking at the budgets for 2022, 2023, make sure that these items are there. All right? That's the financing. You make the noise then. We've talked about the M&E funding. How much money is allocated for M&E? All right, how much money is put there for data collection, management, usage, and where's the central depository? The CPI mess, for example, all right? What, does it have child participation? Again, Now, this is your opportunity now as civil society organizations to push the agenda. Let's go on again. Okay, I've talked about lobbying parliamentarians. You know, I mean, everything, the budgets are passed in Parliament. So unless now you go, and it can't be left to Jenny alone with Total News. All of you need to come together. You need to have a structure somehow that you are able to engage Parliament. Maybe you look for a young parliamentarian who can push your agenda there, all right? County governments, what's happening now? All the CIDPs are lapsing, all right? Now, this is your opportunity to make sure that you make an input to the CIDPs for 2023 to 2028, 5 years. Are they not 5 years, right? Okay. When they do the CIDPs, they normally have a financial projection. So make sure that in those financial projections, there is a component that deals with child participation. At the moment, the DCS does not even have a line item on child participation. They don't. It's a ballpark figure. But now we are saying that this is a crucial area because you all know nothing can pass in Kenya, even in legislation, without public participation. And from the outset, we were told that the child is also a public, isn't it? It's a component. So why are you leaving the child out? All right? Again, the annual plans, child participation expenses should be a line item. The structures, fund the structures for child protection. I think all the groups here have talked about structures, all right? So how do you fund them? Where's the money coming from? Is it coming from the international NGOs? Is it coming from the World Vision or Save the Children? Care Plan, who? Is it coming from the government? Who complements who? Whose responsibility is the child? CSOs. Can you scroll down? 2, okay, fine. I think my question is, which are the lead agencies that are actually in collection of issues related to the children's budget? I think I normally ask this in Total News, World Vision, and maybe one other, right? They are normally very few. And when even they divide themselves now to look at various budgets, it's normally an issue. Again, maybe I think Elijah stepped out, but Elijah is the one who trains normally on budgeting issues. So again, make sure that at least you get a core group that actually leads in this, and make sure that you have a lead agencies. If it is going to be in Total News, let it be known that you are the one coordinating it. Then you look for funds. Look for funds from either Save the Children. You can help, with this. Yeah, do a proposal to them, do a proposal to plan, get the money together, and bring these people together. Give them a crash program, prepare them for the next plan and budget period. Coordination of CIDPs. Again, look for money. Tell Save the Children you want to build the capacity of the counties, and I think they'll support you. You do a nice proposal, basically say that all these things are lapsing, I'm taking so many counties, I want to do, this is my plan, this is how much it's going to cost me. Get people, these young people here, you've got lawyers, wakili wa watoto hapa. There are many young people, I can see sharp characters here. Get them, build the next generation who takes over from me and you, right? And then review your funding sources, all right? Let it not just be the traditional ones. Look into other. I've just looked at the USAID strategic plan for the next 5 years. There is what is called journey towards self-reliance, all right? It's basically doing things do with the children. Then there is changing the way we care, all right? About, alternative care options and all those things, and then the study that I've just finished for the Africa Union, basically on the care reform agenda. So there is money. And I think Save the Children, there are people who are all interested in these kind of things, all right? Marshal resources. Then, I think the next is children's assemblies. Again, fantastic stuff that's being done by Total News. Again, just one organization. They're the ones looking at when the elections are being conducted and all that. Again, get people, get the elections done, build the capacity, get the money to build that capacity. My question is the extent to which the land participation model is being used. All right? Are you familiar with this? All right,
If
maybe.
you missed, we had the webinar last week and we had Laura come in and speak about the model. So you can go to the Total YouTube channel and she has described it very well. So, and today we have the balance model. So we have an African one. So at 3 o'clock we're going to be talking about the balance model by Elvis Fokala. So he's going to be on today at 3 o'clock. So if you want to understand the statutory models, we have one for last week and today we have the balance model. There are two of them, two main ones, that one and this one.
All right, okay, fine. So you'll follow that one up. Then there is advocacy-related course, advocacy programming. I think Save the Children, World Vision, Plan, Care, they have a line item, but they need to be able to help you to be able to get money. So those of you who are involved in advocacy work, again, to be able to generate some funds there. Again, lobbying MCAs. Now, again, the county assembly has an oversight role over the county government, right? So make sure that you lobby them. And that's where now even your faith-based organizations, the communities, the families, people lobby their local MCA and say, listen, can you check for us that there is this funds for children's participation? One of the things that I want to raise with you is scheduling. You will see in the newspapers, the county government will say we'll have a public participation on issues of the budgets, right? But at that time, have you ever looked at the scheduling in terms of when the children are in school or whether they're at home? Again, that's something that you need to think about and look around it and see what can be done. So FBOs, again, look at the spaces. What are the spaces for the children? I mean, you talked about the madrasas, you talk about the mosques, you talk about the churches, the Sunday schools. What opportunities are there? It's one thing to know the space, but it's another thing to have the skills to be able to do this. And the skills comes under capacity building, for you to be able to get this. Academia, again, we need to move from we need to look at innovative methods of engagement, all right? Apart from the pathways that are already defined. We talk about drama, we talk about photo, voice, whatever, But what other things can we be looking at? Leveraging technology, developing themes, the arts festivals. You have art festival, drama festivals, and things like that, where children can actually express themselves, and then you can actually be able to capture this. Then you can actually even have trophies being given, and all those attendant costs must all be inbuilt. And who then gives this? You should be determined. Then the media, you need it for sensitization, awareness creation, the usual stuff. And the media for you is in-house funding. Jenny, you appear so many times on the television. You don't pay them to appear. They call you. All right? So it's in-house funding. So those are opportunities that you need to explore. Lastly, I guess that's the last thing, I guess. Yeah, I think we're done. Community. Again, build the capacity of the community, create space, use the model, community volunteers mapping, facilitation expenses, which you have talked about. Help those, the bolts and nuts, how much are they going to use money for border to go to a place and all, or to buy water, things like small little expenses. Just make sure those things are inbuilt in terms of their data collection related expenses, all right? I guess, yep. That's it.
Thank you so much, George. George is, those fathers of child protection in Kenya. He's one of those ones. So he's a huge resource in this country and across the continent. So thank you so much. I hope you guys have learned something. Okay? Okay? Thank you so much. We are going to compile this into 2 documents, a document that we are going to submit to the African Committee of Experts. So that's why I would request the group on M&D, if you guys can just maybe stay for another 10, 15 minutes just to relook at your document, and we see, because we want numbers. What numbers do we want to check at the national level? What indicators should we track, okay? At the national, county, okay? What indicators should we track? So that one can be really good. Even Mr. Makobe, when you're giving this document to Mr. Makobe, can say, yes, I think this is something we can be able to adapt for NCCS. Okay, so I just want to end up. I'm just going to call Mr. Wamakobe here and just to give closing remarks, and then Felix, and then we can pray and go eat. So I don't know how many people are not busy in the afternoon, because you can stay and we can have our town hall for the webinar. So because the webinar, we are going to have it here. So where we are going to have Elvis Fokala, we have Ronjezani, somebody, I've forgotten his second name, and a child, okay, a former child, a KCA member. He was going to be here. And we're talking about child participation in Africa. We're going to discuss how it happens. And that's why we needed to do these guidelines, okay? So you can be able to understand. So Elvis is going to talk about his model, the child participation, the balanced model. And then we're going to have Renjezani speaking about child participation in Africa, okay? Those myths and taboos that promote or don't promote child participation, okay? And then Brian is going to come and talk about his experience participating in different forums in Kenya and across Africa. So if those ones were available, you can stay put after you've eaten, eat, come back, and then let's have we're going to rearrange this place to be more of a town hall. So if those ones who are available, you're not in a rush to run into a meeting, you can stay and you can have that webinar at 3 o'clock. Mr. Wamakobe?
Thank you so much, Jenny, for that gesture. Well, mine is just to appreciate the team, because I could see from the presentations, you understand the gist of the matter. And I liked the recommendations. They're basically pragmatic and doable. So Jenny, just to add that we'll share the document with NCCS, so as at least we agree on the next way forward, because we take it seriously as NCCS. And just to say you're doing a job. We're doing a job, and we, as I said, we work hand in hand together. So it's just to appreciate and to thank Jenny and thank all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Felix.
Good afternoon. Not much to say, just to thank you for your patience and for your rich input on some of these issues. You can never tell how much it's going to impact generations to come. So we are so much passionate about anything touching on children, because they are the future of this nation. So we commit to working together with all the stakeholders just to ensure that children have a nurturing environment that is favorable for their growth and holistic development. So thank you so much. We are looking forward to more and more engagements so that we advance this agenda of the children. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to ask Mora to come and pray for us, and then we go for lunch. And please feel free to come back for the webinar, and encourage your friends to join in later on at 3 o'clock. Those ones who are joining virtually, they can join in. I know the speakers were sending me a message just a few minutes ago telling me they are ready. So thank you so much, Mora. Oh, Mora is a former child's KCA member. Yeah, so what we have a program in our office, so we don't just let them go. So we let them come back, and for 1 year before they transition to whatever, they come back. But here she transitioned, she came back, now she's a psychologist and working with us.
Yeah, hi everyone. Great, let us pray. Dear God, thank you for the time that we've had. Thank you for all that we have learned, oh God. As we go for lunch, oh God, bless our meals. In Jesus' name I pray, trust me and believe in. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Let's meet at 3 o'clock. Thank you. Okay, if you're not registered, wait. If you're not registered, please register. We need this. So please, if you're not registered, of them. There is this one, and there is this one for the hotel. These ones are two. If you've not either one of these, there are two of them, and this one. So if you've not registered you need to register in both of them. This and this. This, if you've not registered, pass by here. And if you don't have a ticket for lunch, please come and see Omar here.
CIDP's name?
CIDP, County Integrated Development Plan. That's a good person. We do that one.
Oh, okay.
We do a project.
A CIDP. Okay. Sawa, sawa.